Go.
Good morning, Bob Prater.
Morning, Emad Meerza.
Beautiful Friday morning in Bakersfield, California, man.
Oh my gosh.
We got terrific
These
weather.
are the days that make us glad that we live in Bakersfield, and yet
Yeah.
we're both inside our homes.
Well, and I've been getting out. I've been going out on hikes in the foothills. The
Right.
best thing about where I live is we got foothills all around. We got mountains, we got river, we got, and we've been doing that. We can go out, be alone, I'm mostly going out by myself. But yeah, it's beautiful, man. It's been gorgeous weather. We've been blessed with that,
Fantastic.
and really blessed with a lot of family time.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. I mean, unless it, well,
Just
okay.
might not be as happy.
I saw that the Mississippi State football coach, Mike Leach, who was at Washington State, he calls himself the Pirate, and he's a very funny guy. He put on Twitter this week a woman knitting a scarf for her husband, and it was a noose after 2 weeks of isolation. And he got in trouble because not politically correct to be doing those kinds of things these days. Now, we've been going for walks with the dogs. I walked out this morning. We have feral cats. Have I told you this?
Oh yeah, I know your feral cats.
I mean, we live at the end of a cul-de-sac right next to an oil field where people dump their unwanted cats, and somehow they join forces with the small herd that we have, and we feed them. And I can't turn them away because I can't turn them away.
You're a softie. I know.
So this morning I go out.
Our main cat, Noor, we picked up at Hart Park.
There it is. See, Hart Park is a dumping ground as well.
Dumping ground, but he's still amazing. He's like a dog. He follows you around like a dog. Amazing cat ever.
I walk out of my front door this morning to feed the 5 or 6 that hang around my house, and I hear this loud meow to my right up against our door, laying on, because we put towels and blankets out for them. Laying on a towel is a female cat that we didn't name it. My grandkids named it Vader because it's all black except for one little white dot. So a girl cat, a female cat named Vader.
Vader, the in my opinion, most impressive all-time villain of Hollywood. I just think Vader.
There's no doubt, because there's nuance in the backstory, which I really enjoy.
I mean, just his voice and his breathing alone was.
I know. James Earl Jones. So I walk out. There's Vader, little girl. She's curled up, and she looks up at me and goes meow. And she's got kittens.
Oh, wow.
She had kittens overnight. And there have been times that they've had litters and we try to get them fixed. A bunch of them have gotten fixed and a bunch of them haven't. They always go off into the field somewhere and they hide, and I don't see them for days, except to come and eat, and then they go and tend to their kittens.
Are you ordering cat food, or are you feeding them human food?
No, cat food.
Yeah, cat food. Okay.
Cat food. I mean, my gosh, we keep going to places like Sam's Club, and Sam's Club is only allowing you one pet food at a time, and you have to choose cat or dog. We have cats and dogs and a bird. And so
at least if it's cat and dog, let people buy.
Every time we walk in, we buy one more thing of pet food, whether it's some dog food in a bag or some cat food in a bag, we have feral cats that are spoiled. They get canned food as well as dry food, and so there's a reason they hang around, I guess. But
yeah, you're not going to
kittens,
feral cats anytime soon, buddy.
Well, it's really odd to me that this little one would trust us enough to have her kittens right outside of our front door. You have to know, Emad, I love these cats. I mean, I do. I mean, I hate what they do to my lawn. I hate what they do to my lawn because there's nothing I can do. We're looking after this to maybe hire a landscape guy to come in and take the grass out and figure something else out for our front yard.
The grass, it's not. How about the plants and they can. Anything you plant, they can kind of.
Well, they're so acidic in their urine and so on, and so there are just holes in my patches of bulb patches in my grass, and I can put some seed on there and it'll grow. Then it'll grow back a different color than the rest of it and look even worse.
Right.
So
you're right. Maybe at some point remove the grass, man.
Well, it's either that or remove the cats.
Well, you're not. Yeah, but with your heart, I don't know if that's going to happen. Hey, they make sure you don't have a lot of bugs and insects and even mice. They take
Now
care of
that's the truth.
so you don't even need a spray guy. I mean,
Oh,
cats
we have a spray guy. Stop it.
spray guy. Well, anyway, fair enough. All right. So at least people know that you're not going to let your cats go hungry.
Whatever.
You're looking particularly handsome this morning.
You're looking very pretty today. Look at what you have on.
Yeah, I got the normal Arabic thobe garb. Okay, and
Well, how do you spell that?
Thobe. They call
Thobe.
They call it dishdasha. They call it. I call it thobe. That's mostly what they say in Saudi Arabia.
Okay, so like if number 24 for the Lakers were a Muslim, you could have called him Thobe Bryant.
Yeah, I was wondering 24. Where's he going with this?
What?
Yeah, Thobe Bryant. It's funny though. People, relate thobes to Islam, and that's really not the right thing to do. You relate it to the Arabic culture,
Okay.
the region, and it's worn in layers and whatnot. But some like to wear it, converts and whatnot, and even others, just because of these, because the Prophet was, peace be upon him, was Arabic, and it is kind of traditional garb of the Arabs, etc.
Well, I love it. It highlights your eyes.
All right. Okay, thank you.
I don't know.
I like it just because it's freeing.
It looks really comfortable. And now, is it like, does it go down to the floor?
Yeah, it'll go down to your ankles or below, or depends on how you wear it. There's even religious mandates in how to wear it, how not necessarily a thobe, but how to wear clothing for men, right? So some people higher up on the ankles, some will wear it lower. But my brother, for example, in Kuwait, he always dresses in Western dress, believe it or not, for work. Okay, he's got a very very prominent job, so he dresses in suit and tie.
Okay.
And then he gets home, he will not eat out for lunch. He always wants to eat at home, except on like a weekend, But he has to get out of those clothes, put his stove on, which is a more casual house stove, so that he can enjoy his lunch. And it doesn't wrap around your belly, so it gives you a little room there and all that. It's not like a belt, right? He will not come down and sit for lunch without his stove. He will not do it. He just refuses to eat that any other way unless he's out with the family or something, or invited to an event or whatever it might be, or traveling. But yeah, there's some people, there's no way other than the thobe for, certain occasions, especially eating occasions.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm really honest because it's so comfortable, Now the other thing about a thobe in the Middle East and places, especially in the Gulf, is it is if you fit it with the headdress, right, and the whole works, then it is what is considered formal wear.
Right.
My brother wearing it for totally casual at home lunch, taking a nap after lunch, but it's a different type. It's the same style, a different type in terms of quality or fanciness or whatever. But yeah, the very formal dress, you'll see the king on down, or the emir on down, is the thobe with the headdress.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so different, but it's a cultural thing. It should not be confused as a religious thing. It's definitely a cultural thing.
I got you. Well, in our society, in the 60s, that collar came into fashion a bit, and they called it a Nehru collar.
Nehru?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nehru. I have no idea where that's from, but I would imagine it's from the Middle East.
Maybe. Yeah, I can't. For some reason, that word isn't coming to mind. At some point, I'll ask my wife about it. We'll Google it or something. But look, we talked a little bit about what we might want to talk about today.
Yes.
And then I unfortunately didn't give you the information until this morning. But I think it's an interesting time, Bob. I think it's an interesting time because the crisis we're facing, for one reason, and I mean this for one simple reason, okay, or one single reason, is that it is a worldwide shared crisis everywhere, right? And it's threatening so many aspects of our normal lives, right? That is it God sent? Does it say more? There's aspects of this I think are interesting. So I wanted to first begin by asking you, right?
Yeah.
Do you? I know you have a unique sometimes perspective on Scripture as a Christian, and I know sometimes you have a unique perspective on what you think about your relationship is with God. At the same time, I know you have a lot of other co-religionists that agree with you. Okay. Do you believe that this particular pandemic, and it is a worldwide pandemic, and I think the more we're learning about it, the more we're realizing that it's a bit unlike things we've seen even in the last 20, well, definitely in the last 20 years, but even if you compare the 1918 flu epidemic, some qualities about this one, some of its uniqueness is starting to show that it's got interesting. It may not be the end all, right?
No,
But
right.
it would be a precursor to worrying about other possibilities that viruses can go or microorganisms can go. Do you think it's God sent?
Do I think God sent this?
For the first question, do you think it's God sent?
Yeah, me personally, I do not.
Okay. Do you think it is indicative of a chain of events that are about to unfold? Do you think it's indicative of any type of end time thinking that people have? I know Christians believe in end time
Sure.
prophecy, Muslims believe in end time prophecy,
Right.
Jews, others. You can't discount even Hindus and others, Buddhists and others, how they might feel about certain things. But do you think that in any way relates to Scripture?
Well, sure. I mean, do I think that we're living in days that could certainly be interpreted as heading in that direction? Uh, well, of course. I mean, from my perspective, there's very little doubt that the earth is being shaken. While I
Is that a
don't,
good thing or a bad thing?
I don't think it's a terrible thing, but I think that there can be tragedy in the midst of it. I mean, my goodness. I mean, there have been other times that humanity has been reset a bit or rebooted, and so here we are. I think we're probably in the midst of that. While I don't believe that God caused this, that this came from heaven, uh, I do believe that God is allowing it and can redeem it. I believe in the redemptive power of heaven. So,
Before you go on, you said you don't believe God had caused it, but you believe God allowed it.
yes,
Is that not saying the same thing?
not really, not really. If you read the book of Job, you can see that the things that came on him were from an enemy. God gave permission for those things to happen.
That's my point, though.
Yeah, but I think his permissive will is way different than his absolute will. It's like when the children of Israel demanded a king in 1 Samuel 8, and Samuel said they want a king. They didn't, and the Lord told him. He said, "Well, they're not rejecting you; they're rejecting me." Um, and he said, "Tell them that the answer is okay. You can have a king. You're demanding it from me. I'll give it to you, but Samuel, solemnly warn the people what the king will expect from them as his own." And that king, of course, was Saul. So, and he took from them. He took pieces of their dignity and it's not unlike some things that we see today.
Right, right.
I don't want to go down that political road.
No, but I understand what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Permission is different. Permissive will, where he just says, okay, that's what you want. Here you
go. Allowing a what do you want to call this? A scourge, a pandemic. What I mean.
It all fits.
Like the bubonic plague or something of the Middle Ages. But I mean, allowing something like that is different, right? Than let's say a warning of the destruction of the temple for disobedience and not listening to the prophets. That is a punitive act by God, a judgment on folks, or particularly the believers. This is not akin to that.
I don't think so. But how do you? I'm curious. How do you see it?
Well, no. I before I do get into how I see it, I really want to go down the line with you first to make sure I understand and folks out there understand. Because your first answer was terrific.
Well, here's the thing. I hold things in tension. I do. Like the tension on a rope or on a rod or something like that. And there's equal tension going both ways. By the way, look at that arm. But what?
Hey, I'm good with it.
I will arm wrestle you.
Dude, you're more than welcome, but not now.
I know. I hold things in tension.
Holding your hand is not the right thing to do at the moment. I'd still hold your hand, but I'd watch my very well.
Oh, whoa. Okay. So I hold what I see as undeniable hope and excitement. And in the same breath, I understand fear.
Okay.
I do. And I understand being anxious.
Okay.
And I understand um, faith.
It's not all fear and anxiety out there, as you know, by some of the discussions you've been having with fellow
Right.
Christians. Some
Right.
of it's a bit of, what do you want to use? I want to use, make sure I don't use the wrong word, but it's um, recklessness, maybe. And
There are some folks being reckless. I mean, when you see, right up the road from us, there's a pastor in McFarland who is determined with his 400 member church, made up mostly of poor folks,
yeah.
that he's going to continue to meet because he feels that physical meeting is an essential part of Christianity. I've sat with other pastors on the front end of this who share that thought, that the gathering physically of us together is an essential tenet of Christianity. I don't happen to subscribe to their newsletter, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. I think that we are finding creative ways to be together today and to connect. I'm praying for people. I have a friend in Brazil right now who is fighting COVID he is fighting for his life. And so I pray for him. And so we hold these things in tension, at least me. I hold hope in one hand, and yet at the same time, I have eyes and ears so I can hear and see what's happening. When you start hearing that maybe 25% of all cases on earth are in the United States, now that's based on numbers that we're getting from other countries, so we know that's probably not true.
It's not true when you factor in what really probably is taking place in China. But other than that, we're definitely a lead nation in this problem.
We really are. And is some of that self-inflicted? Yeah, probably. I don't think anybody was honestly wanting people to die. Nothing here is on purpose. Everybody had their best intentions. I think even including our president, who was so afraid of what was going to happen to the economy if he embraced this with his words and began to say what he actually knew to be true. I understand trying to save the economy, because the economy is our country. It's who we are, but not really.
Yeah, that may be too broad a statement.
Yeah, because this country is you, and this country is me,
right.
My grandkids, your children, and all of us.
The economy is the backbone of this country.
It makes it run. It's what gives us power.
We couldn't have the military that we have. We couldn't have, so much of what we've enjoyed over the years if we didn't have our thriving economy. But let me, again, ask a few more questions in regards to Christian faith. Beside those that might be acting a bit reckless, like our friend in McFarland, how about those that have started to say, some have said it out there, that this is a punishment of God based on, homosexuality, based
Sure.
on sin nature, based on how prevalent sin might be. I mean, the crowds in Florida and Easter on the beaches, the Easter break crowds, and the bars and the partying and all these other things, and the I don't want to get political either, but the liberal agenda that is so anti-God according to so many of them.
And in some factions of the liberal agenda, it is anti-God.
Right. So I'm saying are those folks, do they at least have some leg to stand on? Is there some relevance to what they're saying in the sin nature, or the proclivity right now, or the tendency right now to, for folks to live in sin and not feel they are, and do it publicly, and ask others to do so, and even maybe try to legislate what these folks are thinking is, what the Christian folks think is sin.
I understand that thought. I understand that view. After 9/11, you saw a couple of famous guys get on CNN together, Jerry Falwell and oh my gosh, I can't remember the other one. One was Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson.
Yeah, okay.
And Pat Robertson, and they literally laid the blame for 9/11 at the feet of gay people, those who had had abortions, that this was God's judgment on America.
I don't say that. Gays, abortion.
Yeah. So here's how I view it, Emad. There is a scripture, and I thought that they missed. I thought it was one of the worst swings and misses in the history of Christianity when those two men went on CNN and blamed sin for God's wrath, for 9/11, for judgment on our nation, because 2 Chronicles 7:14, it says, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, pray, seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven and I will heal their land. And so the onus, if you will, has always been on people of faith. People, it's been on me. It's been on the Jerry Falwells. It's been on the Pat Robertsons. It's been on the Franklin Grahams. It's been on those who are leaders who continue to lay the blame on sin rather than saying, oh God, would you please forgive us? But it starts with being humble. I mean, it's Second Chronicles 7:14 I think that it lays itself out in order on purpose. Like, don't bother turning from your wicked ways because you haven't humbled yourself.
Okay, so it's their lack of humility or being humble, and their excessive judgment, or willing to judge others, that's the problem, or is it?
Well, this. I'm just telling you how I see it. I see it as certainly an issue. I do believe that there are ways. There's a prescription in 2 Chronicles 7:14. There was a pretty well-known. I'm going to get in trouble. There was a pretty well-known.
What do we do, man, other than get in trouble, you and I?
I know there was a pretty well-known voice in the stream of the church that I've been active in for a long time, and this person called the church to 2 Chronicles 7:14. Called them to it. And I thought, here we go. Yay. Until I saw what this person wrote. And then I saw a video of them speaking. They left out humble. If my people will pray. That's where this person started. And I thought, oh God, because it has to start in our hearts. He's less concerned with our postures. He's less concerned with how much we prostrate ourselves. He's less concerned with whether or not we've done bad things, but he is concerned with our hearts. And this person chose to leave that part out. And it caused my head to explode because the other things are worthless. I mean, dung, without first humbling the heart.
I don't disagree that the heart has to be humbled. Absolutely. Arrogance in the heart is a destroyer of faith. But we're what I'm trying to understand is if any of the acts, we're talking about a pandemic right now, tomorrow a super volcano can erupt, or a nuclear war can start.
Ooh, the volcano thing. Remember when that volcano went off in Iceland years ago?
Yeah.
And it closed down air traffic around the world?
Yeah, I know. I know some people. I know because my wife couldn't go to her father on his deathbed.
So so we see how fragile the planet is, and we feel like we're almighty, and we're impervious. Nothing can touch us, and then a tiny little bug enters the earth and cripples every nation on the earth.
We agree on that. I've been speaking to folks about that for some time, that a single microorganism brought the world to its knees. But what I meant to say about the super volcano or these other events is, if at some point, can it be a temple destroying event, a punitive event? And if so, is it due to sin and disbelief?
Well,
or an inability by those who believe, in your case.
So why don't you listen, I'm really curious to know what your thoughts are on this, because I made mine clear. And I know Paul is not your favorite, but 2 Corinthians 5:19 says that the old is gone, the new has come. We are new creations. And then he makes this incredible statement. He says that Jesus came on the earth to reconcile us back to the Father because relationship had been broken by sin, the very thing we're talking about.
Right.
And then he gives this long list of these things that Jesus did to reconcile us back, except it's not very long. It's one thing. One thing. This is what reconciled us back, not counting their sins against them. He's not counting. So based on that, it makes it really difficult for me to look at this and say, yeah, it's because that gay guy that I sat with last week, and that one who in a moment of confusion had an abortion, and it's because the laws don't line up. Now, would I like everything to be morally the way that I see it? Yeah, of course I would. I want my own way, but I realize that we live among different cultures, different ideas. My gosh, there's 200 interpretations of a verse. That's why we have denominations. That's why there's even different factions of Islam, because people disagree.
Certainly.
And so we look at this.
It's funny
and so whose interpretation is going to come into play of what's real and what's not, and what's important and what's not. So,
well, before we segue to that, let me add one.
I'm telling you, just let me make this last point.
Go ahead.
I put the onus on the church. It falls on our shoulders. And the first thing that my church has to do, my people, my community, is humble themselves. We don't need people like Rodney Howard-Browne saying that the government is trying to take over, Christianity. We don't need people like this guy in Louisiana who's in defiance of everything that makes any sense. I mean, when it says that the Lord has not given us a spirit of fear, there's two things that replace it. He's given us love, power, and a sound mind, the ability to see. And so,
I agree with that.
There it is. So that's how I view. It's on us.
Okay, when Jesus, historically speaking, when he threatened of the destruction of the temple, and it was going to happen in their lifetimes, and it did.
It did.
It was based on rejection of God. It was based on excessive sin. It was based on hypocrisy. What was it based on? But it was a punitive act by God, foretold by Jesus after he ascended.
Right.
The relevance of it.
I don't disagree. I don't see the relevance with this.
What I mean is the post.
I understand. I'm telling you that.
Does it show that God can still punish in that way?
I don't see him as a punisher. I'm telling you, I'm the wrong guy to debate this with.
No, I'm not debating. This is an honest question.
All right.
In 66 of the Christian era, was it an act that was it them receiving the punishment that God had?
That was the fulfillment
that Jesus had promised you.
That was the fulfillment of a prophetic declaration. And listen,
by who?
There are many who that muddies the water for many, even on their eschatology.
But I'm not trying to muddy the water.
I know you're not. No, I know you're not. I'm just saying. I'm just saying that
that's 20 centuries ago. Is that relevant to how we should see warned? Should we still be warned? Is what I'm asking you. Are we in a state of?
There are times. If you look at the book of Jeremiah, there were a large group of prophets who were saying, no, we're not in any danger. Everything's going to be fine. Just keep going about your lives. And there was one voice, Jeremiah. My gosh, he was put in stocks and whatnot for, speaking a different word.
If you guys would just throw that at your Christian folk and just say, guys, take a real good look at this. This is a really good example for us to consider when we talk about impervious.
I don't believe that God causes evil. So I'm sorry. I think that the things that were foretold, again, I don't think God causes those things, but he allows them. So I make a distinction. That's how I see. And so this pandemic, has it gotten our attention? My gosh, I hope so.
I heard a friend of ours, Wayne, I heard him say that something to the effect of it isn't from God, it's from evil, and it's from, bad actors, and it's from, whatever. I can't remember exact words. I don't want to misquote him. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that God does not bring evil upon the earth.
Okay.
I don't believe that sickness is from God. I don't believe that the disease is from God. And
you're aware that many Christian conservative thinkers are going to completely disagree with you.
I got no issue with that. Listen, I don't stand on the top of a mountain and claim to have sole truth. I claim to have more questions than conclusions these days. You know this about me.
You ask questions.
So
you do plenty of questions.
So right now, I'm telling you where I live today, Emad, is I do not believe that God is one who sends sickness and disease upon the earth. Okay. I think there's another, as you said, actor. I think there's another actor involved that looks to disrupt, and that God sometimes allows things to happen. My gosh, a perfect example, and this is one where we'll disagree, is the crucifixion of Jesus. That was meant to destroy and to stop a voice. Instead, the enemy had no idea what the redemptive power of God was going to be. Bang, here we go.
Didn't have any idea. We both agreed the enemy didn't have an idea, right? That God had.
You're so funny.
Well, we do. We both agree.
All right. So listen, I've run around the track a couple of times on this. You know exactly where I stand. So yeah. Tell me, what is, and I can speak the classical Christian stuff. I mean, I can tell you what other people probably believe because I went to school.
But it's not that you're not. In this discussion so far, it's not that you've said everything that isn't classical. I mean, you brought up some very valid points.
Sure.
I also think you've said some things that maybe the classical, believers would disagree with as well.
Well, of course. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't have some disagreements.
Right. You brought up Jeremiah. I think that is an exceptional example of some of the difficulties that not only Christians are facing with pastors that are or shepherds that are being misguided by their own ego. Okay, that's so too in the Jewish faith. That's also true in the Islamic faith. We have all these folks that just think that enough with the fear, where we can accomplish anything. We're the chosen. We're the ones. We're God's best, and we can't be afraid.
We're impenetrable.
Right, and that is a great biblical story, and right there in a wonderful book that can explain how easily, let's just say, people by their own inflated beliefs about themselves can become false prophets or false teachers, right?
Well, yeah, and Emad, another good one is 1 Kings 22, which is where Ahab, who was a builder, by the way, he was a developer. Did you know that? He built cities.
Right.
So Ahab, he's now the king, and he wants to take some land back that another group of people are squatting on, and he wants it back. And so he goes to his 400 prophets and consults, and they all say, yeah, it's going to be yours. He consults with the king of Judah, Jehoshaphat, who comes in, and all 400 prophets say, yeah, go. And one of them even made iron horns and said, they're going to be gouged on these horns, just like this. This is how you're going to be. Mm-hmm. And so he's all happy. And Jehoshaphat says, is there no other prophet? There's already 400 there. Is there no other prophet?
He's looking for the reasonable, sane, and faithful one that doesn't have arrogance.
You know what Ahab says? I mean, I don't want to take us off track, but Ahab literally says, well, there is one more. His name is Micaiah. He said, but I don't like to call on him because he doesn't say good things about me.
He doesn't tell him what he wants to hear.
He doesn't say good things about me. By the way,
these are two splendid examples.
Yeah, and so they go in, but Micaiah prophesies the same thing. Yeah, go on, you're going to be victorious. But he's playing like the Beatles used to play with the media, or Bob Dylan used to play with the media. He's playing. Yeah, go ahead, you're going to be fine. And Jehoshaphat says, tell the truth. And he says, okay, here's what I saw. I saw the Lord with the counsel of the Lord around him. And he asked them, what can I do to solve this problem of Ahab, who was an evil king? And a voice comes and says, I will go down and be a deceiving spirit in the mouths of the prophets. And then Ahab will believe and go out, and what happens, happens.
Destruction.
So Micaiah tells that, and they're all freaked out. The guy who built the horns comes over and hits him in the face and says, tell me, when did the Spirit of God leave me and start only talking to you? Because I know what I heard. Micaiah says, throw me in prison. And if it's not true, what I said, kill me when it's all over. So they throw him in prison. They go out. Ahab even disguises himself because to hedge his bets.
He's worried.
Yeah. And he's killed. And it said there was confusion among the men that were with him. And then suddenly peace settled over them because an evil king was gone and they all went to their own land. Now, how do I interpret that? My gosh, that blows a lot of people's theology, including mine. Like, Lord, you allowed a spirit from heaven to come down and deceive prophets for your purposes. That's interesting.
Well, who taught mankind how to perform black magic?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing to me is how many prophetic voices, especially,
but forbade it, right? But forbade it at the same time. The angels taught them and forbade them to do it. You know?
So there are some things. Ahab went out in full confidence that, yay, God is on my side, and that's the way the church is. Listen, nothing's going to touch us. I used to be real good friends with a man named Charles Napier. He was a character actor that lived in the area, and he was in Rambo. He played Colonel Murdoch in the Rambo films. He was in Blues Brothers as Tucker McElroy. He was this good old boy from Kentucky. He was in Star Trek. I mean, he was just, if you saw his face, he was one of the most recognizable characters.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Oh, okay. So he used to come to my house. We used to do stuff, and we'd go to lunch a lot and just hang out because I liked hearing stories and he liked telling stories. And so, and I would tell him stories about God. I would tell him miracle things that were unexplainable, and he would get so freaked out. And finally, one day, he just looked at me, he said, Bob, he said, do you want to know what my understanding of God has been my whole life? And I said, tell me. He said, I grew up in the hills of Kentucky. He said, snake handlers and those who drank poison. He said there was a guy that would come through every year, bring out the snakes, get bit, and then he'd always uncork a bottle of Clorox and go, and then go, because nothing can harm us. Do you see how literally?
But that was what he had to. That was what he was around.
He had to overcome that. But listen, it still goes on today.
Oh, of course it does.
It still goes on today. I mean, maybe not to the extent of picking up vipers and drinking poison on purpose, but we get so comfortable in thinking God's got my back. And my gosh, he does. I really like the explanation of the three Hebrew children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're tossed in the fire by Nebuchadnezzar because they will not bow. They refuse. And he says, okay, you're going in. And they said, that's okay. Our God will deliver us from the fire, and our God will deliver us from you. And then they say, and even if he doesn't, we will still praise him. Bang. That's how things work. And that to me is a more honest representation of the gospel.
That's the believer that understands and has wisdom.
Yeah.
That's the believer.
So tell me stuff.
And I know, also Psalm 91 and how people are seeing that, and that those are the countermeasures, right, to make them understand better how they see that. For us, I would love to continue going down this line with you. This has been fascinating. I've been enjoying this discussion, listening to you more than you have to listen to me usually.
You said you were going to do this, and I didn't think you had it in you, but here you are. Look at you.
I honestly would like to continue. I mean, you're continuing wanting us to pivot to what I feel, but I think this has been an interesting episode of me asking you the questions and you sharing not only your heart, but your mind and your thoughts on this idea, which I honestly has been intriguing. I can't tell you I agree with everything you're saying, but
I know that.
or that I have some Christian friends that agree with everything you're saying, but
Yeah.
but some of the things you're saying are quite spot on, or a lot of them are, and they're excellent examples of where people should go to better understand this. I mean, I don't know that if I was to come in and try to help folks better understand how to do this and factor in God, but not over factor in God or under factor in God, that those aren't the, if I was going to go to biblical examples, that those aren't excellent biblical examples to show the correct way,
right,
okay, of interpreting all these things. Okay. Now, if it was Psalm 91, I would say yes. If they want to interpret it in regards to reading it for instruction for the whole, yes, I think that it's correct in what you're saying. If they want to interpret it as a specific prophecy about a specific individual, then I would say no. You need to look at it from that vantage point. Other than that, I'm fully in line with a lot of what you just said. Okay, except for separating in some ways, what God controls or doesn't, or wills or doesn't will, or is it his intent to, when he allows a thing, that it has its effect. There might be some difference there. Right. Islamically, what's the question?
Let me start with this question. Do you think that the answer to this, first of all, do you think it's from God? And then secondly, do you think the answer is a shift in the culture and a change in the laws? Let's start there.
Okay. So we that Muslims believe that God, commanded the pen to write in this majestic book that is with him all things that would happen in creation from the beginning until the end. Okay, before anything was brought to being. That's one. Two, not a leaf falls from a tree or a feather from a bird's wing or an atom traverses its course except by the will of God. Okay, so nothing can happen except that God wills or allows it to happen. God is not the bringer about of sin. Okay, he's not pushing us to sin, and he's not the agent of evil. But he allows for us to be tested, and he allows for us to have a sin nature, and he allows for us to make mistakes, and then he allows for us to choose whether we're going to repent or not, and then he chooses to have mercy on us or punish us for not repenting. So if not an atom can traverse its course except by the will of God, well, one of the things that Islam teaches in the stages of creation, the 6 stages of creation that took place, like the 6 days that you're aware of, right, before the day of rest, was one of those days in Islamic tradition, Islamic teaching, was the creation of microorganisms, bacteria, and viruses and things to that effect. Islam specifically talks about that. Okay, that he created these microorganisms. That's one part of his creation.
Okay.
Okay. This is, again, we're going to a bit more nuanced discussions about these things. We know one of the days was given to creating these things that we don't see. Okay, but they exist. This is without any confusion, by the way, that's what it was related to in the Arabic lexicon. That being the case, I think we believe without a doubt all that happens in the earth is willed by God.
Okay.
Okay. So
do you make a distinction between his perfect will and his permissive will?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think I would go back to what I said, where he commanded all things. He commanded the pen to write as he willed things to be, and yet he gave us willpower. Okay. We don't remove from God anything in his control, right? And that he allows anything that has happened. It happens because he allowed it to happen. We always say, look, let's say you lose your house, or you got sick before, or you missed an opportunity. And we say, no, that was God's will. To question why it happened is to question God's will. Does that make sense? If that kind of,
I understand that. Sure.
What I mean by that is, does that maybe somewhat answer the question of, absolute, permissible, et cetera?
Gotcha.
Going backwards and saying, I wish this wouldn't have happened. I wish we would have, gotten to the doctor sooner. right?
Right.
Let's say you and me know we've been down the road with cancer with loved ones, right?
Yeah.
Had you know, we not missed that mammogram, had you been able to do this and that?
Yes.
We're taught to say, you know, what if is not a good thing. It leads you down a bad road, and it's better to say this was God's will, and let's move on and do the best that we can. And so, in that regard, we do believe God is in control of all things, every aspect of our life. Yeah. Okay. And that's where I thought that some, Orthodox thinkers in your faith might have a problem with some of your thought in that regard, because I think they might be more in line with that thinking. Okay. Now, in a thing that is bad for you, or may appear to be bad for you, there may be good. Okay. And this comes back to what you're saying: a reset, a reboot, a better understanding, a more empathetic reaction, a more compassion, more realizing that when things are taken away from you, maybe you start to understand that people live with a lot of those things never part of their lives anyway. And you might be more willing to relate now. You might be willing to be more concerned now. Right. So sometimes God does allow bad things, like in the case of Ahab, because of a desire to correct those who are willing to be corrected. So in other words, I'm not saying that people are dying from COVID are deserving of death. Don't get me wrong.
I get it.
What I mean by your example, right, or some of your examples, are those people, the prophets in the day of Jeremiah and Ahab, Ahab and some of those that were thinking like him, they weren't going to change. They were set in their ways, and God.
Well, I would say they were prophesying out of a nationalistic tone.
That's my yes.
They allowed a flag to color what they prophesied,
and we see a lot of that today. We know we're seeing that.
Of course, we
do. And both in the Islamic world, in the Jewish world, in the Hindu world, in the Buddhist world, and certainly in the Christian world, we have this problem. Okay, we also have a whole lot of judgmental, faithful people that have become extremely judgmental. That think somehow there's a perfection and it's only associated with their particular group or their particular ideology, et cetera, et cetera. And so I don't know that COVID-19 is a response to that. I don't know that. But there will be responses to our unwillingness to be guided by God in his ways and humility.
I think he has ways of getting our attention, right?
Right. And that's what I'm saying is, so, just let's say a warning sign. Let's say you're living near a volcano and it gives you a small eruption, or it gives you some, movement. It's a warning, right?
Sure.
And let's say you don't heed the warning, you just don't heed the warning. And so maybe some of these things are warnings by God. I think for sure, God created the world perfectly. Okay. In other words, it was his intent to create it imperfect. It was his intent to allow the Satan to exist among us and whisper into our hearts and in our minds thoughts that weren't good. It was his intent that we have a sin nature. It was his intent that people get sick and die. It was intent that people would starve and we should feed them, and would get sick and we should visit them and try to help them, and be homeless and try to house them, and be widowed and try to care for them, and orphaned and try to have mercy on them. God intended for that in this imperfect world. It was a perfect way that he created this time that we're on this earth to be tested. And so that imperfection is where we have our opportunity. So let's just say, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If everybody was perfectly guided and nobody needed anything, and nobody needed Bob to go out and help them at all and do anything for them, where would your life be at that point? Where would the purpose of your life be? Where would the meaning?
Well, I'm one of those that believes that. So I sit with a lot of. Here's how I'm going to answer this. I sit with a lot of young people who are trying to make big decisions in their life, and many of them are trying to figure out who to spend the rest of their life with. So those big decisions, oh my gosh, Emad, I just completely lost my entire train of thought. Ask me the question again, because there's a reason I was going down that road.
You were just talking about, okay, so I was telling you that is what I was stating, right? That God allows things to help us, reset away from arrogance, away from, certain type.
Oh, who would I be? Who would I be? You answered. You asked me who would I be if these things were not in place.
Things are perfect. Things are perfect. People are all believers.
Yeah, and I do believe now, as I sit with those young people, especially as they've experienced heartbreak. I did this with my own daughters, and I do it with the young that I sit with. There is this balance. Love would not have very much meaning if it didn't have risk, if it didn't have the possibility of going sideways, if it didn't hold the possibility of loss. I mean, you've lost loved ones. I hold my wife and I realize that all of this is temporary.
Absolutely.
All of this is temporary. And so but to me, that's what makes love, honor, all of those good attributes so incredible, is that the opposite exists on the earth. Without that, if this was just utopia, it would just be utopia.
What would be the purpose?
What would be the purpose?
What would be the purpose?
No, exactly.
And I think that's a profound statement. And I think that the same way you described love with the possibilities is the same way I would describe righteousness with the possibilities, because we have a sin nature. Okay. And the same way I would explain health with the possibility of sickness, contentment, survival with the possibility of starvation, and so on and so forth. Safety with the possibility of being insecure or having not a safe environment, and so
or the possibility of a pandemic.
Right. And so there are two things I'd like to bring up about that.
Okay, well, hold on. We are almost at an hour, so we don't want to go too much longer.
I agree. So the two things is you're going to do that to me, or I'm going to lose my train of thought. The first is that prior to this pandemic, there has been much imperfection going on in the earth.
I agree.
Sickness, disease, starvation, illness, oppression, injustice, etc. Okay, maybe not in your neck of the woods, right? But in a lot of other places.
No, of course.
Sadly, we don't see that somehow as we don't many times perceive that correctly. Okay, and empathize enough or realize that this is a problem on the earth that we may be eventually also held accountable collectively. Okay, right. What this pandemic does is it brought us all together. In other words, we can't avoid the fact that it's not starving kids in Africa, or people that are being religiously persecuted in China, whether Christian or Muslim, or in other places, or whether people are being abused in Syria, or whether people are being, whatever it might be, right? Whatever abuses are happening, or injustices are happening, or suffering is taking place. The difference with this is that we share it with everybody.
It's a level playing field, and this doesn't respect anything.
But that's the best, if there is a silver lining in this.
I get it.
Or lesson, right? It's making us think together,
right?
And realize we are in this too. We're in this problematic difficulty, okay? And now that's why some folks that are living in bad ways have said, "See, do you guys see how it feels like to be trapped? Do you see how it feels like not to be able to do this or not to be able to do that?" So that there are people that are oppressed in different places are using this as a means to say, "Hey, maybe now you can relate to some of our problems."
Yeah, no, you're right.
Okay, and so I believe God knows, but I believe this is both concerning and saddening, because people are going to die, and we don't know who. God only knows, and how many. And that's a sad thing. And many of them are going to be innocent people. They're not all going to be murderers that have just or molesters or killers, or terrorists or thieves or whatever, or oppressive tyrant dictators, right? Or liars. A lot of them are going to be decent, good, kind folk from all, denominations, in your case, all religions and all ethnicities and races, et cetera, et cetera. Therein is the most relevant part of this, in my estimation. Okay. And therein may be where the lesson that God is trying to get us to listen, because it's not a super volcano, it's not a gigantic asteroid from heaven, and it's not a plethora of nuclear explosions. It's a single microscopic organism that has brought us to our knees. Right. So wake up, people. Wake up. I want to get your attention. Okay? And so is it from God? Absolutely. Is it the punitive aspect? I don't believe that we're in that realm of where there's a clear warning, a clear disobedience, and a clear punishment. I don't think this is where we're at, because illness is a part of our in other words, this is just one virus that plagues us throughout the years, every year, right?
Right. I mean, we like to say, Christians like to say, we live on a fallen planet. We live in a fallen world. It's part of the curse.
And all I'm saying is that flu is around every year. Okay. And many multiple strains of it. Okay. And so, but this one should get our attention. I hope it does.
I hope.
Yeah, I hope it does. And I pray that God eases the burden. And I hope that we do. I put a post the other day saying, we definitely need to stop minimizing this.
Right.
Confusing people. We definitely need to just do what we're supposed to do, which is take the precautions. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, we need to think about those that are living in difficulty all the time. We need to teach our children. We need to be honest with our children, right? And then we also need to remind them that normality is something that we should be very grateful for every day, right? And we should come out of this more empathetic, compassionate, concerned. Thoughts should be more, not just of ourselves. Action should be not just for ourselves.
I agree.
And we should pray sincerely, both for God to protect us from, and you might disagree with the statement, from his wrath, and also for others to be brought into ease, as like some of the ways that you and me live, which is in ease.
Right. Yeah, no, compared to the rest of the world, we live in tremendous ease. We look for opportunities to touch lives. That, boy, for me, Emad, I'm drilling in with people who I know are already isolated and already, my friend Charles Napier, just before he died, we went to Hodell's and spent a couple hours, and he unloaded his entire life to me, all of it. And then when we were leaving, he grabbed me and he kissed me on the cheek. And he said, "Bob, I love you." And he said, "I'm sorry that every once in a while I disappear for a week or two." And he had his head down and he looked up at me and he said, "I fall down holes." And I knew exactly what he was talking about. I have a lot of friends who fall down holes. And so I'm aware that those people are even more isolated today than before COVID. So I am trying desperately to reach out. And I encourage everybody watching this, if you've got friends that fit that narrative, you already know that they're a little bit at risk and now they're really alone. Reach out, pick up the phone. I've been doing Zoom sessions. I've been Zooming with people that I don't even know, because I put it out there on Facebook and said, "Hey, if you're feeling lonely, let's have some coffee together."
I had a friend who had a group called Faith in Action. County. The only reason I'm bringing that up is the way I may disagree with you on a lot of faith matters.
Right. Well, yeah, I know.
But
get in line.
But I will be witness to the fact that your faith is exactly faith in action. You are never afraid.
Appreciate that. I say the same thing about you, because listen, I know you. I know some of the inside of you that a lot of people watching this don't know, because we had a little dust up this morning. We just did. Okay, before we went on, and we're not going to talk about it.
Train of thought. I was trying to give you a compliment. You just broke it up.
Weirdo, listen to me. I'm trying to give you one. Here it is. We had this little dust up, and you came back and you said, "Bob, I'm speaking to you like I would speak to my family."
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And it reminded me of Chris Cuomo and Andrew Cuomo on the air last week.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that yet.
Oh my gosh, where Chris is interviewing his brother, the governor of New York, and he says, "I'd like to welcome the governor of New York, my brother, Andrew Cuomo. Governor, good to have you. Thanks for coming on the show." And Andrew looks at him and says, "Mom told me I had to."
Good, I like that.
And Chris Cuomo, here was Chris Cuomo's response. He went, "Oh," put his head back and rolled his eyes, because family, because family. People don't know. People don't know what goes on the inside of my friend Emad Meerza. I know how deeply you love, how deeply you care. I know that you have been involved in things that have not been publicized, that have helped the downtrodden. And so I'm just saying, right back at you, my friend.
Well, look, praise God for any good that you and I ever do on this earth. Okay, he's the one who guided us into that. But I want to finish that statement.
Go ahead.
Faith in action is a part of who you are, whether it's Santa on Union, whether it's talking to people that need folks to talk to, that are on the edge, of people of all persuasions. I know you and I share that. We don't mind to sit with anybody. We just want to be able to help them, and show God's true nature is that He wants us to be always humbled and always willing to love and care and help folks. And I think we both know that we share that belief. But I wanted to honor you in stating that, yes, Bob, I know that that is who you are. You will never stop being that person. I know that. Okay. And we don't have to agree theologically and all these other matters, but we do know that the heart is where it needs to be. The faith is sincere, and the action proves it. And that's my friend Bob Prater.
That feels like a good place to wrap it up.
It is, because we're over an hour. Okay.
Yeah, we're an hour and 15 minutes.
All right. So let's wrap it up, my friend. Thanks for letting me interview you today. And we're going to do more of that, by the way.
Okay, I'm in.
Yes, I want to do more of that, and then occasionally I'll let you force me to say some things.
All right,
that way people will know that I don't always have to do the talking.
By the way, what was this? Episode 477?
34, episode 34 of Christian and a Muslim walk into a studio. We're back, and we'll see for how long.
Oh, we'll do it again next week. That's how long it's going to be.
But it's been fun so far. So
as you like to say, God willing.
God willing. Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you so much for
today. Then we'll see y'all soon. Emad, we'll be texting throughout the week like we always do.
Absolutely. Regards to the family, be safe. Okay.
Much love to yours. It was good seeing Adam this morning.
Yeah, that's true. That was good. And let's just let everybody know it's good to be it's good to have faith in God. It's the best thing to do to have faith in God, and God expects us also to be responsible in our lives. So be responsible.
Bless you, my friend.
You too, my friend.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
All right, take care.